Hi, I'm Dr. Erika Manczak at the University of Denver, and I'm very excited to introduce some research that my colleagues at Stanford University and I recently published in Developmental Science entitled Water Contaminants Interact with Parenting Environment to Predict the Development of Depressive Symptoms in Adolescents. Unfortunately, we're living in a time when a changing climate, the deregulation of key industries, and failures in government oversight can all contribute to the pollution of our environment, including the contamination of drinking water systems. In following news coverage of water crises around the world, including the lead crisis in Flint, Michigan, I became interested in whether exposure to these types of contaminants in water, such as lead or arsenic, might contribute to negative psychological processes in addition to the well-established toxic effects of such contaminants on physical health outcomes and intellectual disability. So using data from 110 families who participated in a longitudinal study overseen by Dr. Gotlib at Stanford, we mapped participants' home addresses to levels of water contaminants in community drinking water systems as identified by the Environmental Protection Agency. We were interested in whether adolescents who were living in homes serviced by water systems containing higher levels of contaminants, whether those adolescents would show increasing levels of depressive symptoms over a 2-year period. While it's possible that exposure to contaminants might contribute to depressive symptoms directly, we were also interested in whether important dimensions of the family context might moderate such association. So specifically, we predicted that being raised in a more aversive family context, characterized by very high levels of parental psychological control, that might interact with levels of contaminants in drinking water systems to convert a so-called double hit of risk for depressive symptoms. And indeed, we found that for adolescents raised in psychologically controlling families, levels of contaminants in drinking water significantly prospectively predicted increases in depressive symptoms over a 2-year period. However, this effect was not observed for adolescents in non-controlling families. When we looked at these associations further, we found that this association was present for a contaminant composite variable comprised of 13 different drinking water contaminants, as well as for levels of lead and nitrate individually. Levels of arsenic were also associated with depressive symptoms. However, that association did not depend on the family context. Importantly, these associations were not accounted for by levels of family or community socioeconomic resources, such as family income or community poverty levels, nor were they accounted for by participant demographic factors or adolescents' exposure to stress. It's important to note that for the majority of these contaminants, levels were far below the maximum allowable level as established by the EPA. So for example, levels of lead and arsenic in our sample were all at levels considered to be acceptable for human consumption, and yet we saw these associations nonetheless. And I think this suggests that there may be some pernicious links that exist even at very low levels of exposure to these contaminants. It's worth bearing in mind, though, that at much higher levels of contaminant exposure, it's possible that the toxicity of those contaminants may be such that risk for depression would be conferred directly and might not depend as much on the family context. However, that's something left to future research to determine. While there's of course so many unanswered questions with this work and with these associations, this is the first study to establish prospective associations between contaminants in drinking water and depressive symptoms in adolescents, which is of course a heightened time of risk for psychopathology. As well, this is the first study to demonstrate an interaction between drinking water contaminants and family characteristics. We believe that this work has some important implications for developmental science, including encouraging researchers to consider the physical environment and interactions between physical and social environment exposures in the prediction of child and adolescent psychopathology symptoms such as depression. As well, I hope that this might motivate all of us to advocate for safer water systems for ourselves and for our global neighbors. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy our work. Happy reading.